Hey everyone, a little word to the wise. There is a smidgen of cursing in this episode, despite my best efforts, but hey, never claimed I was a good person.
Welcome to Electric Libertyland, here on the Lions of Liberty podcast, your weekly shot of culture, comedy, and liberty with your host, Brian McWilliams.
Hello everybody out there in Electric Liberty Land. Welcome to the show. I am Brian McWilliams, as always, your beautiful host. And guys, this is episode 10. We made it to 10 shows. And I'm all alone. All alone on my 10th show. Tear rolling down my face. Might have been whiskey. I might have missed my mouth and splashed a little whiskey in my eye, actually. Maybe that's it. I'm sipping on a little green spot. Actually, it was a gift from Mark. A lovely little gift from Mark for my birthday. But yeah, so this is episode 10, meaning you can go to lionsofliberty.com/ELL10 for all the show notes that I post there. I use my hard-earned time, my hard-earned money and energy to post those links. I doubt any of you bastards actually look at them, but still, they're there. Also, guys, at the top of the show, I want to remind you, we've got Mark, said buyer of whiskey, on Mondays, so make sure to check out his podcast with all of the leaders of the libertarian movement, and of course people that are on the periphery as well. Might get a little bit of that later, but and also, of course, John Odermatt on Felony Fridays. You can't miss that. Find out what's wrong with the justice system. We're going to talk about the justice system today too, just a little bit. We're talking about everything. It's a smorgasbord. I'm throwing the whole thing. I'm throwing everything at the fan, throwing it at the wall. You know, see what sticks to either the fan or the wall. Mixing metaphors. throwing metaphors at the wall. So another thing I got to mention too at the top of the show, guys. We now have a special Lions Pride that you can join if you want to support the podcast. I've had some people sign up, which is awesome. Gives us a lot of encouragement. We put on some special content for that. We have a call on certain levels of our Lions Pride. We even do a call with you. You get some feedback on the show, shoot the shit a little bit. You can check that out at lionsofliberty.com/support. And please check out our t-shirts, lovely t-shirts from Dan Smots. You can find those at lionsofliberty.store. All right, now that that's out of the way, I want to get into some topics here. As I said, there is a lot to talk about. It would be nice to have just a nice, relaxed show one of these days where there weren't like 400 things to talk about. Maybe just have a nice show about gardening. Brian, how are your turnips? My turnips are great. How are your beets? Beet season just ruined my life. But I will talk about a little stuff. You know, that's funny. The intro to the show, it does say pop culture, and I rarely talk about it because there's too much going on in the world of politics. But I will talk about a couple things here. One thing I want to share with you is a dream I had. Not that that's pop culture, but it is pop science. But I had this crazy dream last night, and I got to share this thing because I woke up just asking myself, what in God's good name, I ate or drank the night before to give me these dreams. I don't remember all of it because you know how dreams are. It's kind of that weird waking state. But I do remember distinctly that I was on some sort of mission with the one and only Hillary Clinton. She was leading the mission. I was like one of her lackeys or a backup guy. You know, like I had a gun. But I remember I was really pissed off because she wouldn't let me go on the part of the mission where I actually got to like shoot my gun or use it in any way. And I was all pissed off about it. So I remember like going up a stairway outside of, what it was, Columbia drug lord's house, whatever we were doing, whatever covert action Hillary Clinton was leading at this point in time in my wacky dream. But I remember going off to the side and yelling back over my shoulder. I was like, "Hey, Hillary, you're an alcoholic." And that was my big zinger. So that was the weird dream I had last night. I also, though, this gets to the pop culture. I also did see a movie called Logan last night. Now, I have been very lax in seeing a lot of films lately. It's been too busy with everything else under the sun. But I wanted to see Logan. I grew up a big fan of Wolverine and a huge fan of the X-Men comics, as I'm sure many of you out there in Liberty Land did as well. And I will say this, I enjoyed it. It was great. I've always loved Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, even though some of the movies did not have the greatest writing. Let's be honest. And you can say he's a little hammy, but this was great. This movie, fantastic all the way through, kept my attention, and I will say, very strong libertarian underpinnings. I'm telling you, man, there are a lot of libertarian themes working their ways into movies nowadays. There's a movie I saw a trailer for called The Circle, which was very much anti, putting yourself out there, anti-spying, anti-putting, having everything that you interact with spy on you, which, of course, we just saw with Vault 7. And if you're not familiar with Vault 7, that is the revelation that, the CIA's got all these hacking tools that can hack into your computer, hack into your TV. I've got my computer open right now. I didn't put a piece of tape over the little eyeball, probably recording me, probably taping me. Your gaming console, they can, in theory, they've got tools that can hack into your car and crash your car if it's got any sort of automatic steering or emergency steering systems, which, screw buying a Lexus, because I don't want my crashing. Forget Tesla. I don't need the auto drive feature, thank you. Just means the CIA can assassinate me all the more easy. So, so that Vault 7 thing is terrifying and plays into the Circle film very well. And I'm just going to touch on the Vault 7. You guys can read all about it. It just came out, but those are the basic revelations that came out of it. But getting back to Logan, so this movie I'm watching, these libertarian themes come up. For one, if you're familiar with Wolverine at all, he was created in a government lab. He's got his claws, which they were bones, and they layered metal on him. And then they were, they were doing all these tests, and he was created as a super soldier. So there's all this kind of underpinning of the government will use you. The government will take people that have special gifts and try to manipulate them to their own efforts or their own ends. And this movie was no different. Now, I'm not going to give away any spoilers, or I'll try my hardest not to, but the themes of the movie, again, come back to this whole X-Men concept of overarching government involvement, government control, and trying to take this part of the population that is special or outside of the regular purviews, the establishment kind of purviews, and to try to either destroy them or control them or trap them or to force them to bow to government whims and be part of the government's overall plot. That is very prevalent. Now, in this movie, Logan and Professor X live very much off the grid, getting out of the way, no electronics, no surveillance, that kind of thing. They also, just in general, think about this. And I remember saying this on the Johnny Rocket podcast 2 years ago, our first Thanksgiving Bukkake show. But the X-Men as a whole is insanely libertarian. You got a professor who runs a private charity that is also a school, so privately funded school, essentially homeschooling these kids. Or you could call it a charter school of sorts, even though they're not getting, they don't have to pay for it themselves, but they're getting free education outside of public schooling. And they're going out on missions to fight against the government, to fight against government control. They're undermining the government at every turn that they possibly can. So it's all super libertarian. And this movie, every time, every beat, I'm like, oh, that's libertarian. That's libertarian. That's libertarian. The one thing that wasn't libertarian was, I guess Mark pointed out, Professor Xavier can use his mind control powers to control people. That is a clear violation of the non-aggression principle. But, we'll let it slide in this case. So anyway, check out Logan. It was cool. I think you guys would enjoy it out there in Libertyland. Next thing I want to get into, let's get into some real topics here. So first thing I want to hit on is the Department of Justice slush fund. And that was uncovered, and Trump said the GOP is going to crack down on it. The GOP says we're going after Obama and the Department of Justice post-Obama for this slush fund, which they use and was created under Obama's administration. Now, of course, if you're not familiar with this is Attorney General Eric Holder, who is still a huge part of Obama's little post-presidency insurrection team, which is going on right now, where he and this gal Jarrett and Michelle Obama and Eric Holder, they're holed up in Washington, basically trying to start an insurrection against the president. Going against all precedent, whatever happened to the peaceful transfer of power. Remember that? Remember when that was a thing in this country? No. Not for the Democrats. Not for insane Democrats and pussy hats. No. Now Obama's got to try to undermine him. He's got to organize groups. He's got to organize protests from Washington. God forbid he goes go to Virginia for a little bit. Maybe go to Little Woods. So no, he's fighting against it. But this slush fund he had was used to promote very liberal, very progressive groups to try to organize riots, try to organize people to rise up for certain causes. I'll give you a perfect example of this. Eric Holder in the Department of Justice funded and organized a group to to protest over the Trayvon Martin shooting. Now, you might ask, why the hell should the government be involved in that case when the case was not even solved yet, or the case was not even resolved yet? It was recently after it happened. It was when they were still talking to the guys, figuring out if Zimmerman was or was not guilty of this crime. In the meantime, the Department of Justice is promoting people to march and protest in the streets over a decision that hasn't even been made yet. Now, the Department of Justice should have been neutral in this. Shouldn't they be trying to find the facts out of the case? If they're going to get involved in any way, shape, or form, it should be to try to find the truth, to try to give this man an impartial hearing. And clearly the Department of Justice is trying to interfere in what's happening by riling all these people up, to try to influence the jury, try to influence the media, to say, no, this is a huge deal. We've got to get the media behind us. They need to say, oh my God, the people are against this. They're against gun rights. They're against Zimmerman. This is a hate crime. Clearly there's a horrible divide in America between white and black. Forget that George Zimmerman's Hispanic. That's not the role of government. And this disgusting slush fund is not only used in this way, but also used in Ferguson, and I'm sure a myriad of other ways that I don't even know about. That I'm sure, well, I can't say I'm sure, that I hope will be uncovered very soon. So it makes me very happy to see the GOP is, at least on the surface, going to look towards this issue. Again, things are moving so fast, who knows? Now, the Obamacare replacement's rolling out, Trump Care, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit as well. Like I said, it's all coming up in the show because there's a million things to talk about. In the meantime, I can barely enjoy this whiskey. Just too many thoughts rattling around the old brain here. All right, so that's the first thing I wanted to hit, just that insanity of the slush fund existing. And of course, where is the media outrage about this? No, not existent. Just like there's no outrage over Obama's insurrection group that he's created, which is insanity. Just think about if George Bush, when he left office, if George W. had created like the nuclear Yahoo Rangers to take down the Democrats, like if he had done that, there would have been such a crazy storm of outrage. People would have been, again, rioting in the streets. Oh my God, I can't believe a president would take this action to undermine our entire democratic system. Well, really, republic system, but to undermine the whole system. None of that's going on. No one's talking about it. No one seems to think it's odd that Obama's behind pulling the strings on this stuff. No, we got to get upset because Trump still may be involved with Russia, despite the fact that there's still no evidence whatsoever to that. And by the way, another thing from Vault 7, there's also a little technique that the CIA developed where they can, it's called fingerprinting someone, basically an attack by themselves to make it look like it's from a foreign entity. Doesn't that sound like something they could have done with this whole Russia thing? Because they said, oh, we've got pure evidence. They never released anything, but they said, well, it looks like the techniques that the Russians use. Oh, like their fingerprint, for example? What a coincidence. So this wiretapping that went on, these leaks that happened, supposedly linking Trump to Russia, that was obtained by probably the CIA, and now is being said looks like Russian handiwork. Oh, well, guess what? We figured out that that's just you guys manipulating it. But again, no, let's keep up the lie that Trump and Russia were in bed together. Because that makes it so much easier, too, that Obama wiretapped Trump. Let's talk about that for a little bit. Let's talk about not only the fact that Trump said it, and there was so much anger from the media that Trump would dare denounce Obama, despite the fact, and every story, by the way, that came out, every single story that came out, said the same thing. I read this headline 17 times. Trump accuses Obama of wiretapping Trump Tower with no evidence. They all said that, with no evidence. Now, forget, again, what I just said, that Trump's been accused of being colluding with Russia and all this stuff with no evidence. And the media gobbled that up with a spoon and kept repeating that ad nauseum. But no, there is evidence. There's very clear evidence, actually, that Trump was wiretapped by the Obama administration, even though Obama's denial is a weak one. He says, oh, well, I didn't order that. No, you didn't directly order it. You didn't go directly to the person and say, click wiretap. No, what he did is he had the Department of Justice do it. So it's ridiculous. They're using semantics to get around it, but there is a literal trail of paper. There were 2 requests put in. The first one got rejected because it was too broad, because it mentioned Trump specifically. And they said, no, you can't go after a private citizen. So then what did the Obama administration do? Well, they went back. They took Trump's name out of it. Submitted it again. Okay, well, now you can get it. Sure. Because now there's a cause. There's some reason. And that's what people are saying, too. Oh, there must have been a clear reason. I mean, clearly, he must have been engaged with a foreign entity. That still doesn't excuse it. I was reading an article today, which I will link to. I believe it was Andrew McCarthy wrote it, a lawyer, and just saying, oh, that's still not an excuse. If you're a private American citizen and you're speaking with another person from a foreign country, that's still not a reason that you can get a FISA court order to do it. And it's not like they're hard to get. Anything you hear saying that they're difficult to get, or you have to have this amazing burden of proof, is BS. The government just says, we need to get this information. We want you to get it. Here's what we think's happening. And the FISA court, with its judges, which are named by the president or by the people specifically to make this a streamlined process, they just stamp it. So the fact that they rejected the first order should have been a massive red flag to everybody that something here is effed up. But no, the media ignores all of that and just talks about how could they? How dare he? How dare he? Never mind the fact that Obama spied on Congress. Never mind that Obama also spied on all the rest of us. I mean, did we forget about this? This is like, I don't understand how the media has such an incredibly short memory. Nobody remembers Ed Snowden. You know, that whole thing where the NSA was spying on basically every single American all the time without any cause, without any warrant, just because they could. But no, if we think that maybe Obama would have spied on a political rival that he despises, well, that's stepping over the bounds. Because, if you had the power to spy on everybody in the world all the time, and you did, maybe if you thought maybe there was a chick that was banging your, or let's say there's a guy that's banging your wife, weren't you going to maybe check on that dude, see if he is banging your wife? That's Obama and Trump. The president's seat is Obama's real wife, and he was worried that Trump was going to come in and bang her silly. And you know what? He did. Trump came in and he loved her up good. Stained the sheets. So, yeah, the whole FISA court thing is just unbelievable to me. It makes me so frustrated. And on top of that, there's something else pretty interesting that's going on. I'll go into our next topic here. So there's another hearing. Trump's only halfway through all his positions that he needs to be appointed to. So he's got this guy named Dan Coats, he's senator, and he wants him to be the director of national intelligence, or at least he did want him to be the director of national intelligence before all this FISA stuff started happening. Because Dan Coats is a huge fan of FISA courts. Why? Because he thinks that the FISA courts and the NSA spying, which he also loves, well, they're designed to go after bad guys. Well, good news, Dan, because we only catch bad guys in all this. We never catch any innocent Americans caught up in this massive web. We never, clearly no Americans were inadvertently spied upon during all of the collections that were going on and revealed in the Ed Snowden documents. And your boss, Donald Trump, is he a bad guy? I mean, I guess he could be. Arguable, debatable if he's a bad guy or not, but he has yet to be proven a bad guy. We have to see the evidence that he's a bad guy. So what's the problem? What's going on? Where's the system breaking down there, Danny boy? But not only that, so Dan Coats, that's one thing. He loves FISA courts, loves the NSA, but he also thinks that Guantanamo Bay is just a spanking great idea. He says full for it. He thinks that it's a great idea that we should keep it open. Instead of having the people there, this is what he said. He goes, instead of having terrorists manning Starbucks, great one, good line, Dan. So, and he also thinks that they're completely lawful. So, I don't know if I can have a sit down with Dan. I'll email his people and find out. But so you're telling me that to arrest people, pull them off the streets, put a black bag over their head, chuck them in a cell, don't let any lawyer see them, don't let anybody contact them. Don't tell their family or friends or anybody else where they are. Don't even tell their dog, because God forbid Fido goes in there yapping to somebody. Then you cut Fido down. You got to shoot Fido's friends in the head. It's going to be awful. It's Chihuahua massacre. but you can't have any due process. How is that lawful? How is that in any way coherent with the beliefs of the American people and what this country is founded upon? So I got to think that in light of everything else that has happened, at least one silver lining from this piece, I think, well, actually, there'll be many silver linings. I think Obama now, he won't go to jail, but I could see Obama's whole legacy come crumbling down, and that would make me very, very, very happy. Oh, so happy. So, but that aside, Dan Coates might get ousted because as a big fan of FISA, I could see Trump being like, you know what, Dan? No. Sorry, can't do it. So let's pray for that. Keep your fingers crossed. All right, let's do one more before we take a quick commercial break. How about that? What do you think? I say yes. Clarence Thomas, Justice Clarence Thomas of the Supreme Court, he recently ripped a new one for asset forfeiture in a ruling on a case called Leonard versus the state. And essentially what happened in this case was that a man, James Leonard, was stopped for a traffic infraction along what they called a quote-unquote drug corridor. And during a search of the vehicle, cop comes across a safe in the trunk. Leonard says, hey, you know what? That safe's my mom's safe. And another woman that was his passenger gave a different story or take on what was in the safe. And he said, what's in the safe is, my mom's, I'm not sure. So they open it up. It has $200,000 in it and a bill of sale for a Pennsylvania house. So you think, okay, well, he's either buying a bunch of drugs with it or he can be doing anything with it. Because it's not the cop's position to just pretend to make up shit about what people can do with their money. But it's clearly it's got a bill of sale for a house. So it seems like maybe it's money for buying a house. So turns out safe is his mother's. And his mother is actually the one that was suing Texas to get her money back. Because what happens? Well, the cop says, what, $200,000? This is a street where drugs are sold. Clearly you're going to buy drugs or you got this money from selling drugs. Takes the money. So now the state's $200,000 richer. So good on this one for suing the state of Texas because the state had provided basically zero evidence other than the fact that they said, well, it's just an area. It's an area where drugs are sold. That's like if you left Twinkies on your desk and the Twinkies disappeared and you saw a fat guy walking by and you're like, hey, fat stuff, you eat these Twinkies? And he's like, no, man, I didn't eat Twinkies. He's like, you know what? Well, you look like a guy who likes Twinkies. And you were around a place where there were Twinkies. Boom. And then you take his wallet, you take all the money out of his wallet. And maybe he goes to jail. That's basically what's happening. So good for her. She sues. And Clarence Thomas correctly pointed out the fact that the state's provided no evidence other than this basic concept. And he's arguing that they need to have much stricter rules on this kind of thing. Because the abuse for asset forfeiture is unbelievable. I was reading a study. I think I was talking to Ryan Stout in an episode a few episodes ago. Great comedian Ryan Stout, good libertarian buddy of the show. And talking about civil asset forfeiture has risen since I think 1998 it got started. It's like quadrupled or more. It went from something like the first year, it had, $4 million and now it's up like $4 billion. Like it's unbelievable the amount of money that these people take. And most of the time under circumstances like this, where there's no way to prove it. Although oftentimes it's not people who actually have the means to fight back. This woman clearly has the means to fight back. She sold a house. She wants her money. But most of these people that take their money or their property taken or their vehicles taken, they don't have that option. They're too poor to fight back. They don't know how to fight back. They need to have someone at the ACLU come and back them up to try to fight for their rights. So good she fought back. Now, here's another. Let me read you a little excerpt from Clarence Thomas' statement here. Modern civil forfeiture statutes are plainly designed, at least in part, to punish the owner of property used for criminal purposes. When a state wishes to punish one of its citizens, it ordinarily proceeds against the defendant personally, known as in personam. And in many cases, it must provide the defendant with full criminal procedural protections. Nevertheless, for reasons discussed below, this court permits prosecutors seeking forfeiture to proceed against a property known as in rem, and to do so civilly. That's important. Civil versus criminal court, guys. In rem proceedings often enable government to seize the property without any pre-deprivation judicial process and to obtain forfeiture of the property even when the owner is personally innocent. Though some statutes, including the one here, provide for an innocent owner defense. Civil proceedings often lack certain procedural protections that accompany criminal proceedings, such as the right to a jury trial and a heightened standard of proof. Partially as a result of this distinct legal regime, civil forfeiture has in recent decades become widespread and highly profitable. Because the law enforcement entity responsible for seizing the property often keeps it, these entities have strong incentives to pursue forfeiture. Yeah, you think? This system, where police can seize property with limited judicial oversight and retain it for their own use, has led to egregious and well-chronicled abuses. Including to a nationally publicized report, for example, the police in the town of Tenaha, Texas, regularly seized the property of out-of-town drivers passing through and collaborated with the district attorney to coerce them into signing waivers of their property rights. It goes on, and I'm going to link to this. You should read the entire statement from Thomas here, but it just points out how atrocious it is. And I've said this before, I don't understand how anything like this can make it through the books and why it hasn't been widely repealed. I mean, why aren't people marching in the streets over this? The day this podcast is airing, Wednesday, March 8th, there is the Day Without a Woman strike, which, as I've said before, and as I'll say again, I don't know what the hell it's for. There's nothing attacking women right now on Trump's platform. It's craziness. Now, if you did take the day off, good for you. You know what? Make a stance. If you believe in whatever it is they're trying to say, whatever they're trying to prove, good for you. That's your right as an American. Take the day off. Thank you for listening to the podcast on your day off from work or your day off from paid labor, putting your kids in the basement with a pizza and leaving them alone, whatever you're doing. Thank you for listening. But still, can we get out in March for civil asset forfeiture? I'll come up with a slogan. Be like, civil asset forfeiture. It is Armani's torturer. Something like that. That's not the best. Look, I'll be honest with you. I'm sure somebody can think of better. There's professional sign makers out there that can think of better. But Jesus, can we stand up for something like this that's really damaging to people instead of just meaningless crap all the time? Instead of like people taking the March for Science. Science is having a hard time. Now, granted, I do think science is having a hard time when it comes especially to climate science. But overall, come on. Pay attention to concrete issues that are affecting people, that are disproportionately affecting minorities. The Women's March, come on. Last statistics, young women coming up 93% as much as men. And we're not even taking into account the fact that women take more time off, that often stop their careers, that look to they look to do other things. You're getting paid 93% as much as men. Do we really need to have a giant march right now when people are losing billions of dollars to civil asset forfeiture with zero right or zero chance to really fight it back and have any real chance of winning most of the time? You think on that. I'm going to go to commercial break. And when we come back, I'm going to talk about some good news for civil asset forfeiture. And we're going to raise the question. Well, I'm going to raise the question to myself, to you, since I'm all in right now, whether or not Arizona has the potential to be a libertarian utopia.
Liberty lovers, have you seen our new t-shirt line over at lionsofliberty.store? If you haven't, well, go check them out. But if you have, then you've seen the great design work of my man Dan Smots of Goulash Media. Dan has been a longtime fan of the Lions of Liberty podcast and credits the show with being a big contributor to his interest in libertarianism and politics in general. Dan is a super talented guy, and he is able to contribute to just about anything creative, whether it's graphic designs like you saw with our t-shirts, whether it's videography, he does weddings and that sort of thing, or audio production. He even did the newest jingle for Letters of Liberty, which you'll hear later in this program. Dan is based out of the Quad Cities area in Illinois, and he's always happy to travel. So if you've got a wedding coming up or any sort of project, video or audio related, I want to highly encourage you to check out Dan Smots and Goulash Media. That's Goulash, Goulash, goulashmedia.net or goulashfilms.com.
All right, and we are back here at Electric Libertyland. All right, so you might have heard my little lead in there, my cliffhanger about Arizona. Now, Arizona, don't get me wrong, is a terrible place. I've been there several times. I can't say I've enjoyed minute one at any point that I've ever been there. I'm sorry if you're from Arizona. You grew up in a horrible place. It's a crap hole, and I want nothing to do with it. Frankly, I'm shocked that all the armadillos haven't left. I'm shocked all the people haven't left. I'm shocked all the lizards haven't left. Just en masse. Just like, just a big burst, and there's a cloud left over, and everybody looks around and go, where the hell did everybody go? They got the fuck out of Arizona, because that place sucks. But maybe Arizona lawmakers realize that, and they're making it better. Because they just introduced a bill which would really curb asset forfeiture. Now, it doesn't get rid of it, which I think is sad. But what it does do is it, just like Clarence Thomas was saying, there is no real burden of proof on the government other than a coincidental association of concepts and words and places they can take your money. This places a burden on them to really have to prove that there is some sort of connection. And that's great. Now, this happened in the Arizona House. This is a bill from Representative Eddie Farnsworth, who's a Republican from Gilbert. I don't know where that is. Why would I? Like I said, Arizona, pointless, crappy state. But let's get into it. So he says this is House Bill 2477, and the legislation would require prosecutors to establish a higher evidentiary standard for asset forfeiture. Yes, that's great. It would basically raise that, it would require police and prosecutors to provide a, quote, clear and convincing evidence that the property was linked to a crime. So, the law doesn't require a criminal conviction before proceeding, which I think is wrong. It at least takes a step forward reforming the asset forfeiture laws. So while I think he should have gone farther, I think he should have insisted on the fact that people should have, if you're going to take someone's assets away, they should have been proven to be involved in a crime. This conjecture on the part of the state that allows you to steal people's money is insanity. It's ridiculous. So he could have gone farther, but still, this is a big step forward. And it passed 60-0, despite opposition from some of the local police unions and all the typical suspects that benefit from money pouring into their coffers from this, what I argue would be an illegal act. So that's good. That's number one. But there's more. But wait, there's more. Remember Ron Paul? Have you guys heard of him? Remember old Ronnie Paul? Well, Ronnie Paul recently came out and he came out supporting, for obvious reasons, a new bill in Arizona called HB 2014. And essentially what this bill is it's a sound money bill, which is awesome. And this measure says, let me quote here from the New American, it would exempt from gross income the exchange of one kind of legal tender for another. And it also redefines legal tender to include specie, that is to say, coins having precious metal content. So basically, you can now exchange gold or silver as legal tender and not get penalized for it. The government's not going to crack down on you. And they're also not going to try to tax your ass off as a capital gain, which is wonderful. So it raises the question, Arizona's now combating legal forfeiture. They're putting out gold and silver as legal tender. Should I have to eat my words? Should I look at Arizona in a brand new light? Perhaps. Because you know what else? Arizona also has open carry laws. Anybody over the age of 21 can get a gun and can open carry that wherever the hell they want to go. They can open carry it. They can conceal carry without the need for a license. Law-abiding citizens, anyway. I'll let John Odermatt talk about it on Felony Friday, whether or not it's just to deny felons the right to bear arms. I agree with him that it is not, but again, he can go into that more should he desire. But how great is that? So, guys, Arizona, I mean, I'm just saying, when California secedes and the Antifa takes over the government here, Arizona may be our last bastion of hope. We'll be fleeing there. It'll be like The Walking Dead, a show which, by the way, jumped the shark years ago. If you're still watching it, you're stupid. But it'll be like, we're fleeing the zombie hordes, and Arizona is our last refuge. Or if you see the movie Logan, it'll be our Eden. I don't tell you what that is, but it's basically, it plays a big role in the plot and is essentially a private community. Voluntarism. There you go. Private community there. Voluntary laws. But Arizona, good job. Keep up the good work there, guys. Maybe I'll give you a second look, especially as LA becomes insanely expensive and I can't afford anything here. All right, what next? Let's talk a little bit about Trump Care. And then, we'll do Trump Care, and I'm going to do one more thing. We'll talk a little bit about Israel in just a bit. So, in regards to hashtag Trump Care, or I believe it's called the American Healthcare Act, and a brilliant work of naming from Paul Ryan, really grabbed the public's imagination there, Paul. But everybody's just calling it Trump Care because Trump has signed off on it. Now, that's confusing because Trump, his whole signature thing and what he had agreed with Rand Paul on was, repeal this thing all at once, really replace it with something substantive. And also, Trump was a huge advocate of having you be able to get insurance across state lines. Now, I don't see anything about getting insurance across state lines in this new bill. In fact, it keeps the exchanges in place. Yes, the healthcare exchanges, which have been failing all around us all the time. There's barely healthcare exchanges. For example, Trump, in his speech to Congress, I think he referenced where was it? Indiana, maybe, or Illinois. It had one healthcare provider left because the markets had crashed down upon themselves so hard. I mean, Jesus, when you could find more brothels than you can healthcare providers in Illinois or wherever the hell it was, you have a problem. And yet, Trump has no problem signing off on this bill. And trying to pressure Rand Paul to sign off on it. Yes, the same Rand Paul who went and tried to read the bill and was denied via armed guards. Because God knows we shouldn't allow a senator to read a bill that's in the House to comment on it before it's pushed through. But that's not all there is to hate about this bill. There's a lot to hate about this bill. Justin Amash and Rand Paul have taken to calling it Obamacare 2.0 or Obamacare Light, and I agree with them wholeheartedly. Because let's just tick off the things that are wrong with this bill. I already listed the fact that the healthcare exchanges are still around. You still can't compete or you can't shop around for different insurance providers across state lines. It does absolutely nothing to address pharmaceuticals. It also, instead of having, Obamacare had this subsidy, well, they've renamed it and tried to make it sound like it's some sort of tax incentive, but it's essentially just keeping the same subsidies Obamacare had in place. From what I've understood from reading about it, what happens is in Rand Paul's plan, he had tax credits that, you could either have health savings accounts, but also you had tax credits that were refundable to you as long as you put money in. The way this new Obamacare Light or Trump Care is set up, you still get a check, even if you put nothing in. So that's called a subsidy. That's called an entitlement. When you are not putting any money into the system and yet you are getting money out of the system, that is an entitlement. So that's in there. Additionally, it's got a penalty. So they got rid of the individual mandate. So you're no longer penalized for not having insurance, but they penalize you if you have a gap in your insurance. So what's your incentive to come back on? Or I guess there's a huge anti-incentive to drop your healthcare insurance in the first place. So that's lovely. So if you're a young, healthy person, you say, well, great, I'm going to drop my insurance now. Well, now if you try to get back on in a few years, they're going to hit you with a penalty under this current system. They also have the provision in there where if you have a pre-existing health condition, you can't be denied insurance. Now, did this whole system implode and didn't all of our healthcare premiums skyrocket because people with pre-existing conditions could not be denied insurance? So now let's see, what have they done? They've gotten rid of the mandate. So that way there's not many people paying into the system. Nobody's being forced to buy healthcare insurance anymore. But yet you still can't deny anybody with a pre-existing condition insurance. So how exactly is any of this going to get paid for? How exactly is that risk pool going to be mitigated? Because all the young, healthy people are going to leave, at least the ones that aren't scared to leave because of this penalty they're putting in place. Things are just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse and snowballing worse and worse and worse. And I can't believe that these idiots in Washington don't see this. I guess I'm not surprised that Trump didn't see it. But, I mean, the rest of them, how could you not think that this is just the worst possible? I mean, Obamacare was already bad. You've basically just made Obamacare worse. It's shocking in its stupidity, for being completely honest. Absolutely shocking in its stupidity. I mean, I know. And then on top of that, too, Medicaid stays the same. The states are going to get a big ass payout. They're getting something like $100 billion to individual states to bolster their own Medicaid programs. There's literally nothing to like. So we'll see if it passes the House. You know, it's got all GOP support. The president's behind it. But good news is it will not get past the Senate because Rand Paul and Amash and I believe Mike Lee and someone else, I don't know if it's Ted Cruz or not. I think Teddy was involved earlier. Good old Severus Cruz. They have the power to stop it, and they should. They damn well better. I got one more topic in me today. I apologize. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter show. I'm traveling and I've got a lot of stuff to do coming up, but I'm going to do a little longer show next week, guys. I've got a friend of mine who's another comedian, Matt Neal, who also is involved with MAPS. You might know them. They do a lot of research into the use of psychedelics and how that impacts the brain and different other uses for healing and treating of disease. So he is very liberal bent, though. So it should be an interesting show engaging him on a few topics. Might be some haymakers thrown from my side. So that will be a little bit of a longer show. All right, one more thing to wrap up the show. Let's end on some good news. Goodish news. Not for Americans, mind you, but for our pals over in Israel that we give so much money and armament to, and we like to give so much support to in the public sphere. I know Trump loves them, loves the Israelites, but they've got some good news for all of their citizens, and that is they are decriminalizing marijuana use. According to Haaretz.com and multiple other sources I've seen too. So that's pretty awesome. In Israel, they are decriminalizing it, and to the point, it's not full decriminalization where you can just walk down the street smoking it. You're still not allowed to smoke it, so that's decriminalization, not legalization. But you will not be charged with anything up to 4 times where you're caught using it. So that's great. Good job for you guys. I mean, still should push for overall legalization, but hey, if our pals in Israel are doing it, hopefully AIPAC will get behind it. The Association for Israeli-American Relations. I can't remember what the exact spelling out of all those letters is, but hey, if they're behind it, God knows they can get our politicians to do just about anything. If they can force us to give them billions and billions of dollars a year in aid and military weapons to a tiny country that's got no issues and has a nuclear weapon that shush we don't know about, nobody's supposed to talk about, then I'm sure they can help to push through a little legalization of marijuana on this side of things, huh? Come on, boobies. Come on, give us a little help, my boobies. What's funny, though, is that they needed to legalize weed over there. If there's any peoples that need weed, it's the Jews, because that is the only way gefilte fish gets eaten. Because that shit is disgusting. I remember I tried it one time. I was at a friend's Seder, and wow. I mean, if you've ever met a piece of cardboard that got fucked by a trout and then was left in the sun, like they left their cardboard trout love child in the sun for about 2 to 3 days, you've got gefilte fish. Just a hunk of disgusting, rotting fish. It is truly, truly vile. So at least they've got somebody to eat that now. So, good job. Good job, Jews. You found a way to get people to be hungry enough, to have the munchies enough to go through that stuff. You know what? I think that's going to do it for today's show, guys. I thank everybody out there for listening to Electric Libertyland. Just a reminder, if you enjoy the shows, if you enjoy this podcast, please do go on to iTunes, Lions of Liberty, and give us a review. Hopefully 5 stars, You're already there. You might as well have a good time with it. So yeah, iTunes reviews help us out a lot. Share the podcast with your friends. Tell them, hey, you should listen to this idiot talk about gefilte fish and his weird terrorist dreams with Hillary Clinton. Maybe they'll get a kick out of it. Plus, follow us on Twitter at Lions of Liberty. Join our Facebook forum. You can converse with me and some other people that are they're good folks. That's, of course, just go to Facebook, Lions of Liberty Forum. It'll pop right up. If you don't look like a crazy weirdo, we'll let you on in. And remember, lionsofliberty.store for all our t-shirts. We also have awesome koozies now, guys. That's a low cost of entry item. You can show your pride when you're drinking, convince some people in your drunken orgies to check us out. And also, you can support our podcast at lionsofliberty.com/support. I think that about does it. So, guys, thank you so much for listening. Appreciate you listening to me ramble on every Wednesday here. So, from me, Brian McWilliams from Electric Libertyland, stay plugged in to Liberty.